Hey everybody, TacticAngel back on the PlayStation 5 to run down the history of the USS Rochester, which appears in World of Warships Legends as a Tier 7 US Navy premium cruiser. My review of Rochester should follow shortly, and once it is available, you should see a link to it down in the description. The importance of anti-aircraft defense for the United States Navy was contemplated prior to World War II, and made abundantly apparent when it was thrown into the war by a sudden and unprovoked attack on Pearl Harbor, achieved functionally entirely through air power. At that point, the U.S. cruiser force consists largely of treaty-era cruisers. The Baltimore class would constitute the first cruisers built outside the treaty system, and though they offered a notable improvement in air defense over previous designs, there was still room for improvement. The Oregon City class of cruisers was meant to be that iterative design to take a Baltimore class hull and bring that to the next level, specifically in the anti-aircraft department. The ships would still be designed around the 3x3 arrangement of Mark 15 203mm 55 caliber artillery found on most Baltimore class cruisers. Though built for more efficient AA defense, you might be surprised to learn that the Oregon City class ships had slightly fewer AA guns in total. The intended efficiency of the Oregon City class was meant to come out of the rearrangement of a lot of the ship's systems, and in particular her superstructure. The size of the superstructure was reduced and set further back on the ship, though she shared the same overall horsepower, generated by 4 General Electric steam turbines. All 4 engines had their exhaust trunked into a single funnel, with the overall theory that, with less superstructure in the way, each of those AA guns would have better fields of fire. The reduction to weight of her superstructure also meant that the Oregon City class cruisers would reduce weight higher in the ship, which is both generally helpful for stability, but also meant that if they needed to add more technology and systems in the future, the ship could more easily handle that weight better. It should be noted that if you're trying to figure out how this works based on the ship model in-game, what we see here is not actually the original configuration of an Oregon City class cruiser. USS Rochester was the third ship of the class, originally intended to comprise 10 ships. Only 9 would be laid down, and of those, only 4 were completed. Rochester was laid down in May 1944. She would launch in August 1945, just a few weeks after the unconditional surrender of Japan, and commissioned into service in December 1946. Though too late to join World War II, she would have been one of the best cruisers that the U.S. Navy had at the time, and most future-proof. Her early service would be in the Mediterranean, standing overwatch during the Palestinian crisis around the northern coast of Crete. She'd return to the U.S. and transfer to the Pacific in time for the Korean War. As part of Carrier Task Force 77, she was ordered to provide shore bombardment support for the 1st Cavalry's landing at Pyeongdong on the 18th and 19th of July 1950. She would come under attack one time during the war, this being by a pair of North Korean planes, apparently one Yak-9 and one IL-2. Misidentified as friendly aircraft, the planes were able to make their attack run, missing the Rochester with 3 of 4 bombs. The 4th hit the crane on the back of the ship, damaging it through sheer blunt force, but the munition failed to detonate. Together with the Crown Colony class cruiser, HMS Jamaica, the ships engaged the North Korean attackers, and it was ultimately the Jamaica that would shoot down the IL-2, which caused the remaining North Korean Yak to flee. Unfortunately, the encounter did cause 2 injuries and 1 death aboard Jamaica. Though seemingly a very minimal engagement, this was the only North Korean fighter shot down by naval forces in the entire war. Rochester was lucky to have escaped the engagement with no significant damage, though the crew did paint a Purple Heart upon the damaged crane. She would continue to provide bombardment support throughout the war, though she was just as much used as a helicopter platform. By this point, her original seaplanes had been replaced by 4 Sikorsky HO-3S-1 choppers. Following the war, Rochester returned to the U.S. and put in for refit in May 1953. It's at this point that her original complement of 20mm Oerlikon cannons and 40mm Bofors would be removed. These were replaced by Mark 33 twin mounts for the rapid-fire 3-inch 50 caliber cannons that we see on the model in-game. She would serve for the next 8 years without major incident, and was considered for conversion to an Albany-class guided missile cruiser. The Albany-class were converted Oregon City-class and Baltimore-class cruisers that obviously previously had very different priorities when it came to superstructure. But ultimately, only 3 of the 5 cruisers considered for conversion were completed. As such, Rochester was sent to the reserve in April 1961 and would be sold for scrap in July 1974. And that pretty much rounds out our history of the Rochester. If you've enjoyed this, please join me again for our review of the Rochester, and once it is available, you should see a link to it down in the description. In any case, I hope you have enjoyed the video. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.